I'm the chairing today.
Whoa.
I know, look out.
Said you better bring them.
Don't ask the person who's known me since the 8th grade what's happening here.
Heidi's awesome.
Thank you. Actually, the first time I'm chairing, so if I'm actually missing anything, just point it out. Like Steve just got me to start the meeting. So
No, Mark did.
The champagne,
Yeah.
you didn't bring champagne.
I didn't bring champagne. He's all about the food. Yes. Well, why don't we go around, we'll have introductions at the table. We have some newer-ish people here. And hopefully you guys had a chance to look at the agenda. We have a pretty full agenda today, so I'd like to sort of stay on task and stay on topic if we can. I know it's hard to do as commissioners, but we'll try. I would love to have people introduce themselves across the table and then online. So Mark, do you want to go first and we'll go around the table?
Good morning, everyone. Mark Rudson, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff.
Good morning, Adam Paul, Mayor Johnston, Regional Affairs.
Morning, Luke Palmisano, Senior Legislative Policy Analyst with Denver City Council.
Good morning, Darrell Watson, Denver City Council, and Andy Kerr is extremely late, by the way. For the record. For the record.
Noted.
I don't know why he's saying that because it's now my turn and I am here to introduce myself. So Andy Kerr, Jefferson County Commissioner.
All right, we'll come back to Andy.
I usually like his facial expressions online, so we'll have to keep watching.
The rolling eyes, particularly.
I know. Heidi Hinkle, Broomfield City County.
Ashley Stolzman, I'm a Boulder County Commissioner.
Doug Rex, Dr. Cobb.
Commissioner Bill Holen, Arapahoe County.
Your turn.
I don't know you. Abe Layden, Chairman of the Board for Douglas County.
And online, should we go alphabetically or your,
I think Heidi first.
let's go Miss Heidi Grove.
I'm the other Heidi Grove, Homeless Solutions for Boulder County Systems Manager, Boulder County Community Services.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Good morning, Kathy Smith, Community Resources and Open Spaces for Arapahoe County.
Chantel.
Good morning, Chantel Lewis, Denver City Council.
Tracy.
Sorry.
No.
Filling coffee with Adams County.
Thank you. And Tracy.
Tracy Crawford, Jefferson County.
And Catherine. Paolo.
Good morning, Paulo Diaz, Adams County Community Safety Wellbeing.
All right, Melinda.
Good morning, Melinda Stevens with Dr. Cog. Sorry, I'm not in the room with you all today.
Good, Sophia.
Hi, everyone. Sophia Vigil from Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. I am the Regional Coordination Lead.
Thank you so much. Am I missing anyone?
And we're gonna.
Can they hear us?
Well,
True.
they can. We were
I'll
trying
do
to
that.
deal
I'll
with
text
that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate your time. We are going to have a full agenda today. I'm going to kind of run through a little bit and then we'll go back to number 2. We're going to have an update on Boulder County local minimum wage. The third thing that we're going to talk about is the discussion of MACC 2024 work plan and supportive services playbook. And then also the discussion of the 2024 MACC meeting schedule. And then number 5, we're going to have a conversation with Denver Mayor Mike Johnston. We might have to cut conversation if the mayor attends earlier or later. So we'll just have to kind of be really malleable with that. And then why don't we go back to number 2? Is everyone okay with this agenda?
Looks great.
Ready to rock and roll?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, I'll hand it over to Commissioner Stolzman. They have an update on their Boulder County local minimum wage.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here this morning and to share sort of what we've done and answer any questions people have.
And I am trying to share my screen, but I just need, I should have had this ready to go. Sorry. The first thing I'm going to do is just show what wages we've adopted. And Denver led the way in this space. Everybody probably knows back in 2019, the state allowed locals to set local minimum wages because they felt that regions have different needs and different issues, and wages need to be different in different areas. As a result of that, Denver raised their wages. And there's a couple of years of data and some economic analysis on how that's impacted the area. And then and the economic analysis has showed it's been quite positive for Denver through the COVID period. Edgewater joined them, their neighbor, and now has also worked on raising their wages. And now Boulder County is a third group to go. When
Did you share your screen?
I'm about to, sorry,
Okay.
I'm just slow.
So say. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got it and I'm working on it, sorry. I have too many things open as well. Sorry, everybody, I can't talk and drive my computer. All right, let's see if that worked. Hey, okay. So you can see on the screen the jurisdictions that have changed the wages, and the motivation for us in our areas are nonprofits that help folks are seeing record needs at lines for food assistance, housing assistance, and it's people that have full-time jobs and they just really are not able to pay their rent, make ends meet, get food, things like that. And there's a lot of information you can learn and read about who's earning minimum wage, because you think like, oh, these are just kids that have these jobs or something like that. And it's really not. It's single mothers a lot of the time. The majority are women in their 30s and 40s, the majority of people making minimum wage, and they're full-time employees. And so it's important, you know, to be able to have a thriving economy that people who are working full-time are able to care for themselves. And the state wages just aren't doing that in our market area. You can't afford to live in Boulder County if you're making minimum wage. And we do have a lot of mothers that are in that position. So we were hearing with the rapid increase in need at our different assistance centers from our EFA, our Sister Carmen, the people that provide the vouchers and the food, that we needed to take action right away. So we had been working with a coalition to do a regional wage, to try to really all raise wages together. And through COVID-19, that sort of fell apart because people were saying, well, we can't do this now and impact the businesses when we're already impacting the businesses. And now that we're coming out of some of the pandemic closures and things like that, the time really felt right. We did try to get the other jurisdictions in Boulder County to do it at the same time as us, and people just for a variety of reasons felt that next year would be better for them. So if you look at our wages that we have up on the screen, what we did feel that employees who are working in unincorporated Boulder County needed immediate relief now. So we did take action, but if you look at what we did for our 2025 number, we actually slowed the rate of growth so that if the other jurisdictions would like to come on board, they can match that same number in 2025. And we could all be on the same wage starting in 2025. So actually anyone who wanted to join us could do a 15% increase. You'll remember in state law, the maximum increase you can do in any year is 15% above the state. And so because of how we structured it and because of what the new state number will be in 2024, everyone could join on the same number starting January 1st, 2025. And I do think a very good argument could be made that the Denver metro region is a market area, and that, you know, wages in our market area should be relatively close to one another. So in an ideal world, I do think it would be nice for us to all work to get similar minimum wages so that our businesses don't feel the need to jump borders. Like if I'm, you know, in Louisville and Louisville has a minimum wage that's one number, and I have a coffee shop that's like, okay, well, I'm just going to move my coffee shop 100 feet and be in Lafayette and have a coffee shop. So I think it creates some really unnatural things in a market area that have different minimum wages. And so the more we can work together and get on the same wage, I think it would be really positive. So if you look at what we did, The living wage, if we would have targeted the living wage, would have been around $25 in 2028. And through our public feedback and compromise that was reached, we couldn't get to that, but we did get to a goal of 25 by 2030. And you'll see from this chart that what we adopted actually puts us very close to Denver, basically by 2030. So the way it's all structured, you can only do 15% in any year. And there are a lot of rules, so we couldn't just match Denver overnight, for example. None of us can match Denver overnight, the way the state law is structured. But we could get on a plan where we could all get to the same wages over a period of time. And so that's really what we're looking at. And I just want to invite everyone to consider making a change. And you can only make a change starting on a January 1st time period. So like if you wanted to make a change for 2024, you'd pretty much need to have a public hearing tomorrow. So that you could adopt it January 1st, 2024. And it would go into effect then, so you'd need 30 days, right? So if you wanted to do it January 1st, 2025, the work would need to be done in 2024. And so I'm happy to take any questions or give any more information about how our process went and where we're headed.
I'm curious, Commissioner, for migration or impacts based on different minimum wages across the region, did your team or did Bola do any kind of economic review of that? I can check in Denver to see if we're seeing anything, but if there's migration based on business moving or individual move based on minimum wage.
It's really hard to know that, the answer to your question. There's been some economic analysis on the impacts of Denver and Edgewater's wages, which have shown very positive results for the businesses in those areas, being able to retain more employees and things. The Restaurant Association produced some counter evidence that they felt that it impacts restaurants disproportionately, that Denver would lose restaurants as a result of it. The data doesn't exactly indicate that Denver has lost restaurants as a result of that, but that is what they are purporting.
Okay.
The data doesn't exactly support their position. I think it's also very hard with the way that workers have changed how they work. So you have a lot more people working from home. So the central business district in Denver doesn't have the same number of employees as it did before COVID. And if you look at the data with that in mind, I think you can say that having employees in an area contributes directly to how many restaurants you have in an area. Save time and employment.
And I think the other factor is that the eating habits of people in Colorado are changing radically. I mean, people don't go to high-end restaurants anymore as much as they used to. And we're eating salads rather than steaks.
Good for you.
Thanks, Bill.
Excuse me.
Where's my ounce of
guilt for the day.
7 pounds so far this week, my friend.
So the way we wrote ours does give everybody a chance to come on to the same number in 2025, but we also recognize, if there's like an effort to get everybody on a different track or everybody were in the same, we're all going to do this together and it's going to be this big regional approach. I'm interested in learning more about that as well, just because we would need to amend ours, which would mean we would need to work on it in 2024 also. So
And I
just for
think
planning.
that concept is very, very important, because you'll stop the mitigation and moving out of areas. But I don't think that's a motivating factor that much as you suggest. I think it's just the economy and the changing habits.
The other nice thing about doing it now, it seems like there might not be a ton of interest in this topic, but the other nice thing about doing this now is most businesses, like when you start to ask people at the Chamber of Commerce, if you talk to business owners, are paying more than this already.
Yep.
And so it is sort of the perfect time to raise wages, because it's really just people that are being taken advantage of that are earning less than this.
Being buffered by inflation.
Well, I think it's a high compliment, because this is really the purpose of MACC. You've heard me say for
going on 6 years now. Small but mighty, we represent over half the state's population. And when commissioners in the region get together, I think really good things can happen. Of course, I'm going to give you the bipartisan view. And my colleagues from CSU will recognize the economics degree, but it's the basic economic principle that I think I'm wrestling with a little bit. For me, I wish everybody in my community could have the highest wages possible. But I think when government starts creating minimum wages, there's a lot of research out there that indicates that inflation will result and fewer jobs will end up in the marketplace. You're one of the most brilliant people I know, Ashley. So I think if you can convince me with good research, I'm happy to look into that, but
The
that's my
thing
concern.
with the economics in mind, I think that's actually the most compelling reason to do it. When you talk to businesses, people keep talking about fears of a recession coming out of what's been done with interest rates and things like that. And the only two things we could do to counterbalance a recession would be to lower interest rates, which we cannot do, or raise wages, which we can't do. And so to me, I think the economics argument is exactly why you would want to do this.
Yeah, I just had a comment. We had some really good conversations internally within Adams, and we have set about the process with staff to move forward for January 2025. We were working on prevailing wage at the same time, and our staff expressed that they were stressed about implementing both. And so we are on a timeline to implement an increase in minimum wage for January 2025. And we've been chatting with our neighbors in Arapahoe to have some shared research on wages, living conditions, cost of living, all that. But the anecdotal conversations I've had, even with restaurants, is that they are already paying $21 an hour, depending on the circumstances in the restaurant. And so to your point, I am optimistic that our research will show that we're benchmarking what's happening in the market and preventing folks from being taken advantage of that for whatever reason are not paying market rate. So this allows us to benchmark.
And that holds true for the county. We've always paid significantly higher than the minimum wage.
Same.
And, I think with the advent of the unionization issue that's facing us all, we want to get ahead of the market.
I was gonna bring up, statistics show that in places where the union participation is higher, wages are higher across the board. It's not just the companies that
Influences the market.
It influences the market. And so I think, having Denver, Boulder, maybe not so much Edgewater being a huge market influencer, but more and more. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And a good coffee shop, speaking of coffee shop, and pizza place. Not that I'm looking.
Well, why did you look at it?
I feel really seen right now. Steak and pizza.
Just to help Andy here, I've said I like pizza, so he wasn't looking at me because of my Italian heritage. There you go. Andy. Now he owes me a beer. And a pizza.
I
They're a
think,
good place.
I think I will say that I agree with Emma. We're also taking on small minority owned business because there is
That too, yeah.
if you only do one if you don't do small minority business as we're doing prevailing wage, there's a potential for conflict between the two. And we're trying to figure out how to thread that needle. And you guys know the potential stress between those two. And so as we do that and minimum wage, we're taking a big bite of the apple for next year, but we think that it's important and bold. I personally am very concerned about the restaurants piece of it. We worked real hard to keep restaurants in business during COVID, and then they're not feeling a lot of support when we say we're doing this. So we have to do a lot of stakeholding. We have to do a lot of support. And just like when we are doing like rental assistance, we may need to lean in areas to help restaurants in other ways to raise the bar rather than a race to the bottom. And that's the thing I appreciate is like, we could say things like, well, it's not going to work. Don't improve because of these other unintended consequences. And I say, do a pre-mortem where things could fail and try to address those failure points and try to avoid them. And so for me, I'm going to err on the side of let's do the best thing we can and then deal with the unintended consequences, but let's go in eyes wide open. And that's through taking our time, measured approach, transparency, and then accountability. things are screwing up, you say, yeah, all right, either we're taking on this risk knowing it, or there was something that happened that we weren't aware of, but we've got to address it and we need to own it. And I think that's what we need to do as politicians and elected officials more often is say, look, we're going to take it and we know that there's some things we know about and there's things that we don't know, but we're going to fix it. So, one of those unintended consequences will be compression in the entire market. And while I agree that there could be some impact on inflation, what my joke was earlier about inflation is inflation's already getting us there. The market is already pulling us up. And so that's the way I see it. But I am worried about restaurants. I'd love to hear how you guys, how that fares. with you.
Wages in particular.
Yeah, exactly. And then it is an interesting concept. And I heard this from an advocate for some other folks that are underrepresented or they're challenged, particularly the development mentally disabled community, development disabled communities. Somebody once told me that the underwage actually helps get people into the market more. And I thought that is exactly the opposite of anything I would hear. So just, I want to kind of unpack those kind of comments that you hear periodically to figure out, does raising the minimum wage actually prevent some people that this is their entry point? And so I'm anxious to hear about equity also from that standpoint. Intuitively, I don't like to keep the bar low to let people in, but figure out how to get them up to raise the bar. So that's been our approach. So I appreciate where you guys are going and look forward to hearing about how your rollout goes.
Elaborate. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of action in this space.
Take a restaurant tour.
Steak, pizzas and salad.
Are your cities on?
Well, so what's interesting is in 2019, yeah, all the cities wanted to do this. And then, and there was a coalition that was working on it and then COVID hit and it was like, well, let's pause. And then this year, I thought people would want to be on board and they're like, we want to do it in 2025. And so like the word on the street is, yeah, they're on board for 2025. Everybody wants to do it in 2025. But work on it in 2024 for a January 1st, 2025 implementation. But all the entire Louisville City Council just flipped. The superiors, it's all new people. So I give me a month, then I'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we have to look at too, and I think that the positive impact of this, not only for the employees, but it's forcing the restaurants to be more competitive in the market. And I think that's the key issue relative to whether a restaurant fails or succeeds. And I think that's a positive, that would be a positive impact. That
Yeah.
their expenses go up and what can you do? You can improve what you're presenting to the public.
I would like to know just sort of the stakeholder work. I know that we in Broomfield are going to be looking at this, and luckily we're a city and a county, so it doesn't just affect our unincorporated parts of Broomfield. But we do want to work regionally, and I serve on our Chamber of Commerce too, and they're actually, on the fence, advocating for it or not. I think it's a lot of education, and I think it's a lot of stakeholder work. But we have to get beyond this fear of doing something that's going to help people. At the bottom, line, that's what we're doing. But I would just like to know what the stakeholder work is going to look like or has looked like in Boulder County.
Yeah, for us, we did surveying and we did a bunch of community meetings. We met with the chambers of commerce. Our survey data came back, people overwhelmingly supported us doing this. And we had a lot of participation, which was really great. Even the business owners, while their support was less strong than the general public, was still strong support. So when we parse it the different ways, I would have rather all the cities came on at the same time, that would obviously be better. And that's why I think having the conversation here, it's like the thing I heard from cities, the only hesitation was, is the other city gonna do it? Well, are they gonna do it? Are they gonna do it? And for us, it was just, it's a whole nother year of time that employees that are earning minimum wage would be making that much less. So it was like, for me and the decision of going ahead, it was just came down to a moral issue for me personally. It's like, I cannot have them another year making that wage. But
the cities join, are they gonna have to do the like start over, or can they jump in and catch up with you?
the way we set ours so that it slides we could have been more aggressive than what we did. We did it in such a way that everybody can catch up and we could all be on the same number January 1st, 2025, the way we set ours up. But if people don't act in 2024, then they can't catch up. I mean, you can only do 15% a year. I'm not calling on people, sorry.
Yeah.
I've just got a quick question. So for us as commissioners, if this is a priority, can I at least the talk or maybe even the next steps to having a coordinated approach? How do we actually workshop that? I mean, obviously, we're not going to be able to strategize in this meeting, or do we have subcommittee meetings? I mean, what's the thought process if we're looking across the metro area to have at least the beginning of the discussion of consistency? How do we execute on that? How has that been done in the past for stuff like this?
I can speak, and that's a really good question. I think for us, what we have done historically is respected the autonomy of each local jurisdiction, but really tried to have a collective voice as MACC. So you might make a motion to direct your staff, or that MACC might support an exploration of a increase in the minimum wage throughout the metro area. If that's second and supported, that becomes a position of MACC that we all, I think in good faith, would explore. I would just say as Douglas County, because I respect this organization and you all, we would endeavor to talk to the business community and really do the research, get a survey out and explore what this would look like.
It's like the mayor is coming through. That's Chase Phillips.
I gotta go to 10 o'clock. I'm gonna be out there. I'll try to come back and join. Sorry. Good job, though.
Great. Are there any other questions?
On the question of coordination, I mean, I think exactly what the commissioner said, could work through this committee. There is a group in the Boulder County area that's kind of a subcommittee that's formed. But I do think the more of us that do this collectively, the easier it is for everyone, for the businesses, for the resident. And so I think making that group as inclusive of whoever wants to participate in it is the way to go. Each jurisdiction has to take action with their authority. That's one thing that's sort of annoying about how the legislation is written. I was like, can't we just sign an IGA that we're all doing this together and have one body be in charge of it? And the attorneys were like, no. You all have to do this.
Well, I asked the question because I'm willing to come and sit and be with, I think this once a month meeting is great, but I'm just trying to see, do we have opportunities for additional meetings for, as a commissioner, for me to come to Boulder or for me to come and show support, say, hey, this is what we're seeing in Denver. Here to listen, collaborate. I mean, do we have that as part of our process? If we don't, can we start doing that? Because I think it makes sense to show, not only to say solidarity on some of these issues. And I would love to engage in any of the business discussions. I'm a, business person. I'd love to come and sit with you and listen to what folks are saying. And
Well, Denver's our capital city. I think we would, I don't want to speak for the group. I think we would all love to have Denver come and visit and have that conversation. I'd welcome you in Douglas County anytime.
Okay.
We don't have that structure right now, but I think it's a great idea.
I would love to.
And we should meet at a restaurant.
Spaghetti.
Commissioner Kern?
I like that
I
idea.
would, I agree, Abe kind of laid out what we have done in the past and what MACC can do. I would say that this is definitely a discussion that we also need to have with at least some of the municipalities. And for me, Westminster's the one.
Also just left.
Westminster's the city that, is split, 40-60, but that's close to 50-50 between Jeffco and Adam. I think of like with Douglas County, there's a reservoir and a river between our counties for the most part. I don't see that as much, but Jeffco and Adams share Westminster as a city. So that might be somewhere where a former, still current, but soon to be former mayor might be able to help us and not bring in all of CML. I'm not saying that, but bring in some of the cities. And in Jeffco, Edgewater is a Jeffco city that's already done this. We have a huge border with Denver, who's above even Boulder at this point and stuff. So I think that, those borders matter, but it would behoove us to bring in some of the
cities.
Sure, Jen?
Just from a staff level, I am participating in Adams County. My position is not, I guess I'm like the legislative government affairs, but I'm just helping with some stakeholding. So I wanted to see if maybe any lessons learned, if there's any staff that you know that are working on that. Because I'm working with our larger Adams County team to make sure that we don't forget anyone in the process and making sure that all of our stakeholding is as comprehensive. So if there's any specific staff members that any of you commissioners work with that you are comfortable connecting with me, I would really appreciate it. I think we just want to make sure, as Commissioner Odericio said, that we do this right, and we really make sure that no one's left out of the conversation. And I think Adams County has a lot of those kind of overlapping little spaces, so I think we'll definitely be reaching out to our neighbors as well as we continue the conversations.
Have we heard this conversation being elevated in other groups? Is what I also want to know too. So we mentioned, you said,
I haven't.
no. What if our Metro Mayor's Caucus is looking at it at all?
Well, you know, one of the really cool things again about this group, not only do county staffs, they're some of the best staffs in the state, but each of us as commissioners oftentimes have the ability to really work with our cities. We have great relationships with our cities. And so when we say, you know, other groups and other municipalities, the hope is that when we have something here, those commissioners can really speak to, or bill with all the different cities within Arapahoe County. I would throw out there, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, you know, exaggerate the hypothetical, and why not just raise the minimum wage to $50 an hour? Right? And I'm thinking from economic principles, what happens there? And if you're a small business owner, you're just going to hire fewer people and you're going to increase prices to offset the cost to pay for those people. So I think, you know, I'm going to continue to really look at this, but I'm going to rely on you all to give me some good research to help me through it.
From the Metro Mayors, if I'm still the chair for a couple weeks.
I'm
We
not dead
have
yet.
not that as a whole group, I think I think Edgewater leading the way is an interesting conversation. A community of that size to take this on is, I think, pretty interesting for a lot of mayors. And so their retreat is in January. And I encourage maybe to have those conversations, the counties to have a conversation with your cities to see if that's something I try to tackle, but it would make, in my opinion, more sense for cities to come together and do this together. So we don't have, even on the Denver Lakewood border, we hear from some of our smaller businesses that, you know, the healthcare, the nursing home type businesses that Denver has raised, and they are struggling to staff because we're so close and you can make more money in Denver versus the city of Lakewood.
All right.
Mark, will you give her your business card?
So I'm kind of gathering just that we're gonna have to develop more communication and then making sure that it's at sort of top of mind, especially when we have cities come together, any sort of cities group that comes together, the Metro Mayors. I think that would be important to prioritize this conversation. Just to have that stakeholder work. And if you want to share, Ashley, too, even sort of what sort of stakeholder work you all did, I think that would be really important. So we're not reinventing the wheel. And anytime our managers too, like our city and county managers meet together, they also, you know, talk about these sorts of things. But, and I also know, like, I'm not the expert on minimum wage on my city council. So I would actually have someone else be more of the voice there. We kind of have to parse out our duties on our personal city council because we're part-time. So, you know, it'd be someone like a Councilor Devin Schaff would be someone who'd be more at the table, more knowledgeable than I would be. So I think it'd be good to sort of get a good litmus test on your county boards and then within your cities as to who wants to help us tackle this, at least tackle the information and possibly move forward. So, we added 2 people to the room too. Can we introduce yourselves? Jillian, you want to go first? Sorry.
Oh, sure. I was online. I'm Jillian Coffey. I'm the Senior Advisor of Legislative and Government Affairs for Adams County.
Commissioner Lynn Baca with Adams County. Good morning, everyone.
And then we added Laura.
Good morning, Laura Thomas, Commissioner from Douglas County. Thank you.
Anyone else online that we missed? Good. Okay, great. Do we have the mayor here yet, or should we just start
Should
the
be getting
conversation
here at 10:15.
right at 10:15? All right. Well, we might have to parse out this number 3 discussion. Thank you for all the discussion on minimum wage. We would like to discuss the MACC 2024 work plan, and thank you, Ashley, by the way, for speaking. I appreciate that. And supportive services playbook. Mark and I have kind of discussed a little bit what structure looks like. Moving, from Boulder being the chair to Broomfield and then eventually Denver. What do we want this work plan to look like? And then supportive services playbook. Right now, do you want to kind of talk about this a little bit?
I can say a few words, Councilmember Hinkle, and then Heidi Grove from Boulder County would like to add to the conversation. And just to note that we had planned to have a Prop 123 deep dive at this meeting. We ran into some troubles with COVID and sort of sabotaging our ability to get that done. So what we're hoping to do is tee up just a little conversation with you all today and then communicate between now and January about some next steps in respect to the funding supportive services playbook, which is kind of the second to last page in your packet, are the 3 strategies that the commissioners adopted back in October. It may mean some communications between now and January. Remember, the next business meeting for MACC is in January, so 2 months. But there could be some important steps to take between now and January. So our thinking is to prepare a memo or a white paper and communicate out to the MACC commissioners sometime over the next 4 to 6 weeks and lay out some options. And Heidi in particular has some thoughts in that regard, and we thought we'd just share those. And if everyone's comfortable with that approach, we'd just move forward and be back in touch soon.
Good morning, commissioners. Thanks, Mark. I do want to just kind of bring into awareness that my colleague in Broomfield, Mandy, is also on the call, and Mandy and I have already had some preliminary discussions, Commissioner Hinkle, as we prepare for this transition. So as Mark mentioned, we were unable to connect with the state over the last few weeks. Their staff has been plagued by COVID and it's hit them pretty hard. So I will be connecting with Kristen Toombs probably next week or the week after to talk about what's possible and where the language is flexible with Prop 123 related to supportive service dollars. We have confirmed that supportive service dollars are allowable in Prop 123 to the extent is the piece that we need to discover and explore. The other thing, and Mark mentioned this, that might be worth us exploring is a white paper of what it would take for an 1115 waiver. As there were some funding opportunities of recent that the state just was not ready to go after and apply, and really assessing what we can do collectively to help the state be prepared should another round of funding be available. So to Mark's point, we will work on pulling those together so that come January 2024, there is at least a bit more of a detailed strategy on both short-term and as well as long-term work that can be done to increase and expand the funding opportunities for supportive services. Mandy, is there anything I should add or I'm missing?
Nothing I can think of. Sounds like you covered it. Thanks.
Any questions? Thank you.
I might have questions. This is Heidi, the other one. From a staff perspective, how heavy of a lift does this feel like? Because we do have Dr. Cog helping us now with admin type work. How does it feel as staff collaborating? Because I was thinking, that as we lead forward in 2024, we could have some sort of leadership planning committee and talking with you all on staff about, what this playbook actually looks like and how we can kind of flesh this out. How does this feel as a staff member?
The 1115 research is pretty extensive, to be quite honest. That said, I know that there has been some preliminary work done on HICPUF, and I've just literally been connected with the HICPUF team that is over the Swishy pilot, which Zach had presented over the summer, which is exploring Medicaid reimbursables for supportive services. So I think that once we are connected with the HICPUF team, it'll be a little bit more clear on how much of a lift it actually is.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
And Heidi, thank you so much for this, Commissioner Watson in Denver. I know I spoke with our legislative team. We have an entire legislative team that supports Denver County Commissioners as well as Denver City Council, as well as we have a legislative team within the Department of Housing Stability. They may be able to provide additional support. And so we'll circle back with you, however you feel it's helpful in December to help prepare for January, so we can speak to what Denver is doing and what we're hearing, not just in Denver, but also statewide. So if will be of any assistance, we can definitely provide additional support with research, with helping you with information for providing a presentation in January as well.
Thank you, Councilman. That is really helpful, and we will definitely take you up on that offer.
Okay, and I ask you to call me Sir Commissioner here. Councilman, I want to be a little more official here. But you're welcome. And Luke Palmisano, who's sitting here with me, he is one of our lead legislative aides, leaders for Denver County Commissioners as well. So he kind of takes charge of some of this and coordinating that. So we'll make sure you connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
The British never give people raises, they just give them titles. So.
Yeah, I love that. Give me a note. Thank you.
The titles feed your children. That's the question. My 19-year-old son would beg to differ. Great, thank you so much. And I work with Mandy on another board as well. So Mandy does some great work in Broomfield. And I know we're gonna have a change in leadership in Broomfield in our Health and Human Services as well. So we're kind of going through some changes in Broomfield. But I think anytime that we can sort of, work collaboratively, I think that would be great. Particularly, knowing how complex Prop 123 is and knowing where, supportive services falls into that and how we can advocate federally, with different agencies or whatnot. So, does anyone have anything on here that's kind of, other than the fact that we are kind of tackling a big, topic for next year? I feel like this is a big topic, but it's also pretty staff laden, Does anyone have any heartburn in this? In addition to the heartburn that you already have?
The problem is, nobody has any money.
I know.
That's the problem.
Right.
I wonder, do we have a website where we can, like drop like a dashboard where we can drop research and information and share notes? I think it'd be good to have to, I think we have there he is.
Sign seats.
Hey, Mayor, how are you? This is Commissioner Odorizio.
Welcome. I don't want to take it.
Take Steve's seat. Yeah, it's fine.
I know Adams County.
I just.
Hi, good to see
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again. Thanks for having me.
You kind of snuck in.
Mayor Douglas, Dr. Cox.
Hey, Doug, pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Right, introduce yourself. Good to see you.
Mike Johnston, nice to see you. I know, good to see you. Long time no see, man.
Andy Kerr, Vice Chairman.
Long time no see, stranger.
That's George Fields.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have it.
I know, yeah.
As long as we're never using it.
Same, I know.
Yeah, we really do.
Oh, you got the light.
Yes.
Hi, Jillian Babs.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Is Claire here this morning? You run around?
Online.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor,
Yes, thanks for
Johnson,
having me.
for being here. We appreciate your time here.
No, I'm
and
glad
you
to
kind of
thank you.
snuck
I'm
up
glad
on
to join.
us. You're like pretty undercover here, so pretty impressive. I just want to thank you for your time this week. And this is a way that our metro area county commissioners can kind of talk collaboratively. In our last meeting, we did discuss just the migrant population, and we were also talking about your homelessness initiative, and things came up, and we really wanted to work collaboratively and regionally in assisting Denver and vice versa. But I thought I'd just tee it off to Councilmember Watson and you and what, your thoughts are.
Yes, open book here. So I want to say, It's great to have you here, Mayor Johnson, and to the other county commissioners. I think one thing you'll find with this mayor is exactly part of the discussion we're having this morning. He not only has great ideas, he doesn't only lead it by heart, but he jumps in. He's not afraid to take the big leaps into some really sticky waters, from our day before our first day, moving into Housing 1000 and really leading on that and leading courageously on that. Really also working collaboratively with mayors across the country on migrant support and all of that work. I think it's fantastic. And as the author of Prop 123, as we were just discussing a little bit about Prop 123, I think having his leadership in Denver and having his background and enthusiasm is going to be great. So my friend Mayor Johnston, thank you so much for being here.
Delighted to be here, and I'm most excited to talk and figure out how we can collaborate. So I can give you a very brief kind of update of where things are, but mostly love to have a conversation because our goal is to be as good of a partner as we can on this and figure out where there are chances for overlap. So I'm happy to start on the migrant stuff first, if that's most helpful, or what do you think is?
Yeah.
Top of my list.
Great.
Yeah.
I can do that first.
You know, with your time and our time, I think that would be a tough.
Great, I'll start there. I just got off the phone. I was on the phone with the mayor of Chicago on the way over here on this very same topic. Short update in terms of the facts, some of them you may have already seen, but just for update of where we are, we have now, as of this week, had about 25,000 migrants who've arrived in the city over the last year. So that's our total intake over the last year. Only about half of those end up staying in the metro area. About 50% of them do arrive, and their intention was not to come to Denver or Colorado. Most of the migrants that are arriving now are being sent on buses from Texas, from Governor Abbott mostly, and that's the same is true for Chicago and New York and others. And so that's why when we do onward travel, is if someone has family in Chicago or in Boston or Las Vegas and they were always planning to go there, but surprise themselves to end up on a bus to Denver, we find it's much better for them to succeed and better for us to get them to places where they have networks. And so we do help with onward travel. Oftentimes we're the first city because if you're in El Paso, you just go straight north and we're the first big city on I-25. And so that's often the cheapest bus ticket the Governor Abbott will find to send people to us. So that's why about 50% will end up someplace else, which we think is the right outcome for them and for us. In terms of those that have stayed, we had a very big push about a year ago before Councilman and I were in office. That abated through the summer. When we arrived, there was about 400 people a night in shelter in June and July. As of 2 weeks ago, we were over 3,000. So that was our highest number in history. We're about 2,200 now, so it's dropped down a little bit over the last 4 weeks. I'd say we're somewhat in the middle on the national response to this. There are some cities like New York and Chicago that have had essentially permanent rights to shelter. They're like New York is sheltering people indefinitely. The size of that budget, if you want to be terrified, is $7 billion for 2024 for the city of New York. The city of Chicago previously was unlimited sheltering. They were at about $500 million a year this year. I just talked to the mayor right now. They're now reducing their stays to 60 days. So they're doing 60-day stays. What we've done is shortened our stays for individuals to 14 days for single men, essentially. And then for families, they're 37 days. So we've tried to extend families and shorten individuals. But the really big issue here is just really about the ability to work. And so what I was talking to a group of migrants a couple of days ago at one of our shelters and an adjacent encampment, and every single one will just ask the same question, which is, where can I get a job? Like, all I want is to work. And I met with the Metro Area Roofing Association yesterday, I met with the Metro Area Hotel Association, who all said, we got thousands of open jobs. Can we just hire those people? Like, what's the problem? So what we push the federal government on is the biggest challenge here is we have people here who want to work. We have folks who want to hire them, and you're telling us we can't let them work, but instead we have to support them with public dollars when all they want is a job. So that is the system we're trying to fix. And that was why I took these 5 mayors to DC to push the White House and the federal government on that change. We unfortunately did not get that in the continuing resolution that was passed today. But New York, Chicago, DC, LA, Houston, El Paso all came together with us to say, either we need you to give us work authorization or we need you to give us a lot more money. Because if you want us to house people indefinitely, that's very expensive. So what we're doing now is we are really pushing people into work opportunities as quickly as possible. Because for us, even if you transition someone into housing, that's not a good outcome unless they can get a job. Because we can get you housing for a month, but unless you got a job, you're eventually going to run out of rent to pay there. So the good news was the Department of Homeland Security, we had pushed very hard on this request and they did change their policy. So now Venezuelans who arrived before July 31st are eligible for work authorization. And there's there's literally an app on the phone that the Customs and Border Protection has called CBP One. And if you apply through the CBP One application, you also get access to work authorization. The next challenge we have there is you could get approval for an asylum claim and could come in and you get access to work authorization for an asylum claim. Met with a guy 2 days ago. His asylum hearing for his case that he was issued 2 days ago is April 23rd, 2027. So it is a 4-year wait for that hearing. And it's probably a 12-month wait until he gets a work authorization. So what we're pushing the federal government on is that needs to be a 30-day. And what I've said is we're agnostic as to whatever you want your admissions and border policy to be. That's not our business. But whatever you decide that policy to be, what is our business is whoever you admit to the country, the day you should admit them, you should give them a work authorization. And then we can solve the problem easily from here. The example is talking to Mayor of Chicago. In Chicago, they have 30,000 Ukrainian refugees in Chicago. They've settled in the last 12 months. He's like, you couldn't find one of them if you tried to. No idea where they are, what they're doing, because they're all in a house. They got a job. They all came with work authorization. They came with federal support. They got access to housing. They're doing fine. They have fewer than that. They only have 20,000 refugees from south of the border, and they are over sleeping in every single police station, every single rec center, at the airport. It's a total mess because they don't have work out. So there's a way to do this the right way. There's a way to do it the wrong way, and this current version is the wrong way in our mind. So what we're focusing on is finding every single person who has come into the city who can get work authorization because they were Venezuelan pre-731 and or the CBP-1 app and getting them work authorization right away. And then we're trying to help the folks that don't have that path to see what other work opportunities there are, because we think without them, we're going to be picking up public benefits to support them, or they're going to show up. I don't know if you all have this. My Home Depot's got about 100 people in it every single day, all day long, looking for day labor. We've had the first instances of women now who are prostituting themselves out of these encampments to try to pay the rent. So people are going to make bad decisions if there's no way to work legally. So that is our focus. I will tell you, an impact on all of us is, there are 10,000 folks who have arrived over the last year who have stayed in Denver. And so they are somewhere in the metro area looking for housing, looking for work, looking for services. We presume they're finding it under the table or they're getting work authorization approved. But we know what we're trying to do now is go back and find those people who may be here somewhere who now can apply for work authorization and don't know if they can. So we're going to be doing a lot of these clinics where we bring people in and say, and the only two questions you have to ask someone is, did you come from Venezuela before July 31st? Did you apply for the CBP-1 app? If you did, we can get them a job and get them work authorization right now. And our guesstimate is that could be about 65, 70% of the total population. But Homeland Security tells us only 15% of all the people in the country that are eligible for that work authorization have applied so far, because it is sort of like filling out your taxes for the first time in a foreign language. It's like it is impossible. So most of it, we did a legal clinic last week and it took about 8 hours per person per case with an attorney on site to get them through the paperwork. So they're not helping us by making it very, very difficult. So that's all the good news. But I guess I would say the good news is to a person, I think there's different public perception about this issue. To a person, I've not talked to one individual who is entitled, who wants charity, who wants support, who wants to be put up, who wants to be taken care of. I mean, these folks walked 3,000 miles on their own to get here. They're more than used. The guy I saw in a encampment yesterday, living in a tent. And he's like, well, I'm going to work. That's my truck. I said, how do you have a truck when you're living in a tent? He's like, well, first 4 days I got here, I worked day labor every day. The first thing I knew I had to do was have a car, because if I'm in a construction company, I got to have a truck. So I don't need a house. I just need my truck so I can get people to work every single day. That guy did a 10-day job on a roofing project. Find an employer, went to get paid to get that check. Check doesn't cash, then called the cops and came try to get the check collected. So people will get exploited. Like what we know is just what happens when you have undocumented labor. So I think that's where we are, but happy to jump into questions, thoughts, concerns. I think our goal is what can we do as a region to make it possible for people to land successfully.
Thanks for being here, Mayor. Heidi and I serve on the Immigration Reform Task Force for the National Association of Counties.
Oh, great.
And others may as well. And I'm also on the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, and there's quite a lot of bipartisan support around the work issue.
Yes.
And having people have access to work when they have a visa or in the country for any reason.
Yep.
And so what do you see as the next chance to chase at the Farm Bill this fall? Like, what's the next?
Great.
Because there's so much agreement that
Yes.
people should be able to work.
I'm so glad that you are doing that with it, because then we can work together on the federal push. I think I think what we found is, we hoped it would get into this continuing resolution. It wasn't. They kicked it down the road another 4 to 6 weeks. So I think it will come up in the next ongoing continuing resolution to fund the government. Because there are 3 big items that haven't been solved: funding for Israel, funding for Ukraine, and the border policy / immigration funding. So the good news is we're handcuffed those other 2 issues. And so they can't not do Israel and Ukraine. So I think we have another shot at it. I think the issue will be there's Republican opposition to work authorization unless, like from the House Republicans, the Senate Republicans, I think are in favor of it, unless they do some significant change to border policy. So I think the push would be whatever they want to decide on what they want the admissions to be. If we can get them to push on work authorization, that would be the biggest help.
So if my encouragement would be to expand your coalition to rural areas that need farm workers. There's a crisis, just like the hotels need more labor. I think there's a farm worker crisis, and rural conservative areas
Yeah.
see the need and support H-2A and H-2B visa reform for farm workers. And so getting rural conservative voices there with you at the House asking for work access is very important.
Do you have an idea for who the right coalitions might be to reach out to on that? Or
Yeah, I
could you
can
help
go-
us on some of that?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I also think too, as part of the immigration task force, we're dealing with not only migrants, but we are dealing with a lot of refugees. So, that's part of my daily work, is working with refugees. So because we had a Muslim ban for so long too, now we have all of this backlog in our Afghan population, seeking asylum. They also have 3 to 4 years. So, and we saw the fall of Kabul because there was lack of real funding in our State Department. So we really need to sort of make sure we have staffing to make sure those asylum cases move forward.
Totally agree. And I can share with you the letter we put together with the mayors, but it focuses on these things. It's adjudicated capacity at the border, so you can accelerate the asylum case processing, so it doesn't take 4 years. Plus, it's a coordinated entry plan that we do like we do with other asylees, like from Afghanistan. So it's not just one governor putting on buses to 3 cities. It's actually how do we welcome people in a strategic way. And then obviously the funding and then the work authorization. And so even for us, I was talking to the White House about, can they even do, if you apply for a nonprofit, it takes them 1.5 years for them to give you your 501c3 status. But in the short term, they give you essentially a working license that you can use to take donations, et cetera. I'm trying to get a version of that, which is all right. If you gave them an asylum clearance and they get temporary work authorization right now, knowing that it's coming, so you don't have 4 to 6 months while they're waiting. So we're trying to work on a couple of those short-term patches, because that's a long time for someone to have no income. But I would love your help on people we should reach out to.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that we could at least reach out to a National Association of Counties. And I feel bad that this is just occurring to me. I serve on the Community Economic Development Workforce Development Committee and the International Relations Subcommittee at NACO. And so I feel like through international economic development and or workforce and economic development, we should be doing across collaboration support of work authorization. And then as opposed to just us individually, we get to have NACO and other national organizations involved.
That would be
And
great.
NACO and National League of Cities as well has a rural caucus. So both organizations have a large county caucus, and they have a rural caucus, and they'll have different caucus groups. And so I think the opportunity through our committees and task forces to uplift this to the National Association of Counties from our capacity, and then National League of Cities from those of you who also work for our city, a few city members sitting at the table, that could be really powerful as well, because that could get to the rural caucus.
That would be great.
Well, I was just going to say, thank you. We really appreciate you being here. And my late mother used to say 90% of life is showing up. So you being here with your team, I mean, Daryl, it could be more than 90%. But I think the other thing that's really impressive is that you've identified a solution. I mean, every time, all of us get out to the White House in DC and we lobby and do what we can, but the fact that you are really advocating in work authorization is significant. So, I think for us, I'm a 5th generation Coloradan, was born in Denver. Your success is our success. We want to see that happen. And I think as a region, one of the challenges is inviting 25,000 individuals to a cold weather climate. We want to be compassionate. This is a tough place to tell people that there are not resources after a couple of weeks. So if there are job opportunities, that's wonderful. I'm glad you raised the issue with women and prostitution. I mean, we're women's rights advocates, and for women to have to prostitute themselves to pay for a daily wage is just, it's horrific. It's a human rights abuse. So thank you for being here. And I think we're all excited to collectively link arms to.
Yeah, I'd love to work together. I will tell you, this, one of the challenges I think we're facing is every policy seems reasonable until you see the downstream effects of it, which is we think it's reasonable to say what Chicago's doing. We say there's some limit of number. It's 30 days, 40 days, 60 days. Challenges, we're now hitting those 35 days, and then you still have families with women and kids we got to put out of shelter, and they just end up in encampments. I think that's just not going to work for us or for those families. And so we're working really hard. I'm talking to the Archdiocese this afternoon. We're trying to find locations where we can create family shelter options. We're going to work with some families that are willing to do kind of host families. You can take a family into their homes if they want to. But I would say if you have churches or congregate sites or other places where we can, we're happy to obviously cover the cost, but we just need facilities. And so if you have ideas for places in Denver, you have ideas for facilities that you think are helpful, I think we're going to need to find family sites. And so we're going to keep pushing on that because we just don't sustain without women out in the streets with their kids going into cold weather.
Growing home, a part of that conversation.
No, I've not talked to them.
Growing home, there's a lot of initiatives, but they also could.
They're Westminster's 72nd and Lowell, so not too
Okay.
far off.
Okay, great. And one thing I'll say, I know we're going to transition in a minute to talk about homelessness. Obviously, when we support the homelessness population, we know that population comes with a whole set of lived trauma that puts them in a very different condition. Deep histories of mental health, deep histories of substance misuse, to make it a much harder to serve population. What we see right now that is hopeful is this migrant population is a totally different population. They are incredibly healthy, they're able-bodied, they're ambitious, they want to work, they're ready to go. But what we also see the tragedy of is if we leave that mom and two kids out there long enough, she will eventually start sustaining the same trauma, right? She'll eventually turn to prostituting, and then she'll turn to drug use. Then we'll have a whole new set of people that have the same histories of trauma we're managing. And so if we can get these families into services quickly, they will be very productive citizens very rapidly. If we leave them in really traumatized settings for long periods of time, we're going to start to see those populations look more and more the same.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. This is the kind of interaction we always thrive for. I served almost 20 years in the federal legislative branch as a staffer and Perlmutter, so I know the difficult aspect.
Barry Hart was a mentor of mine when I started to go.
Yeah, he's a good friend. The point that was made about some of our people here who are involved in National Association of Counties. I serve on two committees, and we really can have a tremendous impact on policy in those areas. I'm on transportation and military and veterans. And I think that it's important that you continue to communicate with us when we know when you have an issue that is not being addressed, HUD or from any of the other federal agencies. Give us a call because we have good relationships with. I was back in Washington just 2 weeks ago, and I met with 9 bipartisan representatives and 3 senators. So we do have a little bit of clout. That's help address those issues. I think with respect to the issue of adequate housing for both refugees and the homeless thing, the county, we do a tremendous amount of work with our homeless people and our immigrants. We have a great public works program with respect to the Arapahoe Douglas Works organization, which tries to train and bring with the appropriate certifications back into the big problem is, as we all addressed here, is the fact that if we cannot expedite the process, we're just making the problem worse. And we have a issue along Parker Road where right next to the reservoir there, where we enforce they're not supposed to be there. We get rid of them and try to provide them with alternative housing. And within 3 days, they're back in the same place. So it's that cyclical problem that creates a potential of long-term
Yes.
We need to address that now. We need to really address it before winter hits, because it's gonna be devastating and below in there. I just look at the police reports. Our county,
I do those too.
and it's just, they are, I mean, it's drug abuse, it's domestic violence, and just plain not knowing where to go. My commitment from my colleagues is that we will work with you. We've got, 123, we've got micro communities, which we're all working to provide those options and making those options available through our county programs. And I've always maintained that this issue is not a local issue. It's a collaborative state and national issue. And if we don't approach it from that perspective, we're never going to solve anything. Thank you for your focus.
No, I really appreciate that. I totally agree. Maybe I'll say one thing on the homelessness question while we're there, because I mean, it was talk about the use. We were meeting with some of the cities around homelessness, and the head of the hospital in San Francisco was there, and she said, if I were in a laboratory and I had to biologically engineer a drug that was perfectly designed to survive homelessness, it would be meth and fentanyl. She says that they do two things. One is they keep you up all night, because when you're worried about getting shanked or stabbed, or they make you more tolerant to cold, and they make you less hungry. It's like, if you need to survive outdoors in the wintertime, this is actually the perfect drug to survive on. And so you see like how that trauma invites people into, now we got to get them out of those addictions. But I
We just took a body out of under the underpass in Arapahoe County.
Yeah. Heartbreaking.
And the coroner brings tears to her eyes when she's been to talk about the level of that impact of that addiction.
And so, what we said, fentanyl is now 50 times deadlier than heroin and 1/40th of the cost. And so a heroin addict used to spend $100, $200 a day for, for their addiction. Fentanyl, you can get a tab of fentanyl on the streets here for 60 cents. It's just like, it's almost, and it's 50 times worse than heroin. So it is not a matter of if you'll overdose, it's when you'll overdose if you're using it. So that's the bad news. The good news is I do think making some real progress on this effort. And our hope is we kind of got to clean some of our own house here to try to get this right in step one. We'd love to partner with you all on how we take a regional approach. And step two, I think we're trying to show that this pilot strategy is going to work before we try to scale it. But and I think we've had real success. So early on, our strategy is exactly what you described, which is we all know we've tried a lot of things that haven't worked. And the things we've tried that hasn't worked is trying to move people from block to block that are homeless, because it doesn't mean anybody ever gets anywhere. They just move you from one person's front doorstep to the next person's, and one person's happy when they move, and one person's furious when they show up in front of their business or house, and people stay unhoused. And so simple idea was, can we find transitional housing units around the city that we can get quickly and we can get affordably and move people into, and then we can close those encampments and keep them closed. We've closed our first 3 encampments. First time in Denver history, we've actually closed encampments by moving all those people into housing. And exciting data on 2 fronts. One is, of the 300 people we've approached in those encampments to move them into housing, 100% of those people have accepted housing. 100%. It's like the thought was maybe only 50%, or maybe people will stay pound sand. I like living outdoors. Totally false. 100% of them took it. More encouraging is we're about 2 months in now, and we're still at 95+% of those people that are all still housed. So it's not like they came for a day and said, no, I don't like your rules, I'm taking off. They actually are staying, and it's working. And those sites,
We've seen that success in Arapahoe County as well.
that's great.
A roof over your head. It's a roof over your head, adequate funding, and a job. And
Yeah.
that's the solution.
And we're doing all wraparound services at these sites. It's got workforce training, has mental health support, addiction treatment, long-term housing navigation. So that, and then the benefit for us is every time we do that, we can close 2 or 3 blocks of encampments and keep those neighborhoods closed to future camping. So Councilman Watson's district he's been the courageous first leader on this. We have a few sites in his district that have been some of the toughest, and now I've been the first to be cleaned out, and now we have a couple blocks back in District 9 where now people can.
And we appreciate it.
And we're going to clear out all of District 9. And so that's really working. I'd say what would be fun to think about in 2024 on the partnership front is, as we get all of the city center hopefully closed of encampments, we'll still have a lot of smaller homeless populations around our outskirts, southwest, southeast, northeast, northwest, a lot of on your borders. And we're going to push to house another 1,000 of those people in 2024. But that would be a great chance for us to look at, we know you all have populations that are the same, they're to and from your borders and ours, and there are places where we want to collaborate, where we're happy to make investments into facilities or services where they could serve both your populations and ours. I'll tell you, our early learning is, so far, our hotel sites have worked the best, because they're turnkey. You walk in, everyone's got a shower, a bathroom, sometimes a kitchen, you got privacy, you got a physical address. You don't have to do any construction, build things, remake the ground. Even some of our micro community sites, while they're successful, there's a lot more that goes into putting 50 tiny homes down on a vacant lot than I thought there was. In terms of, the construction guys, say, this is basically like you making me build 50 single family homes on one tiny lot,
And
because
it's a
everyone.
partnership that makes success.
Yeah, so I think we're open to all those, but where you all have land, have needs, have partnerships, have potentially non-congregate sites like hotels or units, we'd love to talk about the 2024 plan after we see what we learned in this first round and how we could work together. So I think we'll have a lot of needs in 2024. We think a lot of that will be in smaller populations that are along East Colfax and along West Colfax and up on the Adams County border and down our Arapahoe County border. So could be, we'd love to talk about working together if that's something you all want to think about.
Anytime there's a lesson learned, it's a step forward.
Yeah.
That's the tough question, which is, how are you addressing crime? And at the end of the day, I mean, for us in Douglas County, 100% of those that seek services will receive them, primarily locally. And we're using hotel vouchers to ensure that everybody that is not service resistant gets those services. But for people that are, committing crimes, open fentanyl abuse, drug deals, harassment, public urination, all of that.
Yep.
I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and one of the oldest facility Triangle closed
Yeah.
because of the homeless issue. And there are AIDS patients with ashes in that area. And it's a historic site and cannot operate anymore because of the closure. So for us, we're not turning a blind eye to crime. And so I'm just wondering, I think, for many, we all have this co-response model where law enforcement in many circumstances is paired with the navigator, primarily to protect that navigator. As well as, ensuring that law enforcement issues are addressed. Is that something where, I know you have the STAR team in Denver that's really significant. Is that part of the model going forward?
Yes, so all of the above, agree with you on that, and Councilman Watson's been very active in this too. So we've done a couple of things. One is we do know we have real public safety risks that exist. Last year in Denver was the highest year of crime on record, I think, in 25 years in Denver. So it's not invented, it's real. So we've done a couple of things. One is exactly what you said, which is making sure we have the right responder to the right crisis at the right time. If you have someone in mental health, this cop is actually the worst person to send to that center because it escalates people. So we've expanded our STAR program. We've expanded our co-responder program. We've also expanded our number of officers. We're going to put 167 more officers onto the street next year. That's a historic new investment because we know there are people that we're also merging our 3 emergency line numbers. 167, yeah, new officers.
Way to go.
That's the biggest investment in 25 years.
Way to go.
And the other one that's true is, what we know for our officers right now is in an area like the Triangle in Councilman Watson's district, 60% of the police calls we got last year were to encampments. Those are responses to encampments. And so it's unsafe that people that are living there. It's unsafe that folks in the neighborhood. The benefit of being able to get all those folks housed is that's 60% of our officers' time we can now redeploy to when you got your house broken into, when there's someone that really is violent. So we think it's both more officers, better deployed, and deployed to the right incident at the right time with our STAR band and our co-responders. And so we are pushing on all those. And I think our officer corps is excited about the prospect of being able to have the capacity to do their job again, because they hate the feeling of people not feeling safe in their own neighborhoods, but they know it's been a great news.
I'm going to cut us off just a little bit.
Yeah,
I
of course.
know that we had Commissioner Baca wanted to weigh in. I know from our last meeting too, out of Adams County, and I know you have 5 minutes left. So then after her, I'll hand it over to Councilmember Watson. And I do want to recognize that Commissioner Dahlkemper, you did have a question. If you want to submit it to online on comments, that'd be great too. Thank you.
I'm going to keep my comments really brief. I really appreciate you being here. Mayor, it sounds like a lot of progress has been made. Given this a lot of thought, the region in general, and I will speak for myself. I can't speak for my board. I certainly can't speak for the region, is that I was really looking forward to a leadership change, elected leadership change in Denver. And you came in, unfortunately, at a deficit, at least our partnership and our relationship over the fence. And it means a lot to this region because what we do to each other is on homelessness, Denver migrants, transportation, it affects all of the other counties. And what I love about this group, what I love about Colorado Counties Incorporated, CCI, there's several county groups, is that we all check our titles at the door. We know that we're competitive collaborators, but this team of county commissioners and this class, going back to like high school, you know, this class of commissioners that we currently work with, really are solution forward. We're collaboration forward and solution forward. And, you know, I welcome you and Adam Paul as your sit-in, and just really appreciate you being here. There's a lot of opportunity for the region and all of the metro area counties for growth, collaboration, moving forward for progress. So look forward to your engagement on CCI. I think as you know, same players, different organizations, but it's also really good to hear and see and build those relationships with different organizations and different settings. So thank you so much for being
No, thank you. I'm really excited to work together, looking forward to collaborate and have lots to learn, and so excited to see ways we can be good partners.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
I was gonna say, we have the hardest working mayor, and oftentimes we know in these roles, we don't pay attention to some of the things that happen in our personal lives. And I wanna,
I'm just looking at that
What?
mayor when you say the hardest working mayor.
He's out. He's out. He's still alive. He's still alive, but it's close. But what I wanted to share, Mayor Johnston, on a very important day of your life, you're here talking important issues with us. So I just wanted to say on behalf of the commissioners, happy birthday to you, sir. We can sing happy birthday to you. Do the real way, but thank you so much, Mayor Johnson, for all you do. Thank you for being willing to be here and collaborate with us. And one thing that you didn't share is that we also are making sure that we're investing in the small businesses impacted by encampments.
Yes.
And it could be a model that can be used across the counties. The administration has invested funds for small businesses, small grants that they can apply for to help with filling for staff or for beautification or whatever direct impacts they had from encampments, they can use those funds for. So innovative and
Councilman Watson's work, we're really excited. We want to have no more triangles. We want.
So happy birthday to you, sir. I know you got to run to something else, but thank you.
My son said, you don't look bad for 70. Very nice guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate you. Let me come.
And commissioners want to stay for 10 more minutes. We have a little bit more business to take care
Good
of.
to see you, man. Looking forward to working together. Thank you.
Anyone online, if you want to submit your questions, we can send them off to the mayor.
Good to see you. Yeah, look forward to working together.
We'll get followed up.
Good work, man. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've never done Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to work together.
Did you ever figure out who that was?
Nice to meet you. Yeah, take care.
The one that looked exactly like you. I need to figure out who that was. I don't.
Oh,
I-
good.
Yeah, I'll-
Glad you did that.
Sure. Right on in. And her has higher name ID in Seattle than I do.
That's
Thanks for having me.
Probably a bad thing to be.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your help.
Always. And
I'm gonna reach out to you about this, the national coalition stuff.
I'll
Is that
let you know
okay?
that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If you said you want, I think you need instead of what you asked for.
Always.
Always say yes to that. If a woman asks you that, that's always the answer.
Yes, please do that. And then what was the other one in Westminster?
Oh, growing.
Yeah, growing home is a lot of work. And the issue too that we're having with the resettlement agency is that they can't work with our migrant population. And so that's,
Interesting.
I was gonna mention.
Results there.
Yeah.
Well, and we didn't even get to like the Afghanistan
It was,
population. Like, because like it's one thing if you're trying to help.
Counselor, I think you just gotta jump in.
Hi, Chantal.
Hi, I just wanted,
Hey, y'all, Andy, sugar down.
I just wanted to talk about maybe some of the lessons learned. I'm sorry, I tried to jump in while the mayor was still here. So when we talk about the House 1000 plan, I think it's important for you all to to know what that looks like logistically and how that looks like for individual council members. So currently, there are a number of sites, those hotels that are within District 8. And so the House 1000 plan, I mean, I have about 600 units that are within my district. And I think it's really important to note, like, as you all are thinking about how you may plan in terms of prioritizing getting folks from being unsheltered into those shelter or into those micro communities or those micro units, that if you don't have counselors that are interested in having sites within their district, then that actually falls on a single or a few members of council to have those sites in their district. And also, if you aren't prioritizing in terms of who you're moving geographically from those from the encampments into shelters, then it doesn't provide an incentive to have a citywide approach. And so currently I have 3 sites, or 4 actually, within my district with over I mean, close to 1,000 units, quite frankly, for individuals and families. And because the selection isn't geographic, that you might have folks that are moving from District 9 into District 8, that it disincentivizes those that either don't want those communities in their neighborhoods, or those that are maybe a little slower to be able to make those identifications. It disincentivizes them to actually participate. And so as you all are thinking about what a comprehensive strategy is, I would implore you to really think about how you prioritize from a geographical perspective to get those folks in those units, because otherwise you'll have folks, which I'm experiencing right now, where I have 3 sites in my district and no one from my district has actually been in. There are no folks who live unsheltered in my district who have actually had access to any of those units, micro communities or the micro units. And so just wanted to like caution you all as you're thinking about what this could look like for your communities, some early lessons learned as a first time city councilor and commissioner.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. We really appreciate your information, especially from an equity and fairness perspective.
Yeah.
We see that in Broomfield already, you know, just trying to figure out land use planning, right? And what that looks like. But also those who have been here, who need that shelter. And I think that that's a very important aspect and issue. And thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, no, I'm more than happy to. It's just really important and something that's really weighed in on me. And also, as you think about like your constituents as well, right, to hear the frustration with your constituents to say, okay, we're making these units available and concentrating these units in one district, but if they're constantly seeing that their communities aren't actually accessing it, then it causes that individual who's representative for that district to kind of be at odds with their community, because I agree, right? Like I agree we should solve homelessness. And of course, my heart is going to lead me in that direction. And so I'm going to be the first to offer up sites. But if it's not prioritized geographically, what you could see is that one community is cleared out or one district is cleared out, but they actually never offer up any sites, but they benefit from a different district, and then that district is actually burdened, and there's no resolution for the folks that are living in those communities. So appreciate y'all. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions.
This is great. Thank you, Chantal.
Sure.
This is Andy Kerr from Jeffco, and I just wanted to say thank you for, I saw some of your comments on the news along the lines of what you just mentioned, and it really got me thinking. In addition, I also went on a ride along with one of our deputies a couple of weeks ago, and we spent most of the time on the ride along on a particular call where we were by I-76, right where it goes over Sheridan and Clear Creek. And so we actually were responding to a CDOT call of some stolen wires, along the highway that actually occurred in Adams County, yet the people they were investigating were living under the bridge between Jeffco and Adams County. And they were technically in Jeffco, but we actually had to drive into Adams County to get back there. So your words and then that experience really got me thinking about how important this is as a regional issue, that the folks living in a tent under that bridge technically were Jeffco residents, but that they didn't know or care where the borders were. We all know and care where our borders are, especially on election day, but the people we're serving don't know, don't care where those borders are, and just raises to me the importance that between counties, cities, and districts, that we all need to really be thinking globally and acting locally. So.
Totally agree.
And I'll
Thank you
just
so
add
much.
to, council member, I appreciate you being here. This is Abe Layden from Douglas County, and we have invested in the Aurora Regional Navigation Campus and are looking forward to being great partners with Denver and the entire region. That said, we cannot turn a blind eye to crimes. We really appreciate the hard work you're doing to ensure that our streets are safe.
All right.
Thank you.
Want to cut us off, y'all. I love you all. We're all hyper excited about this. What this brings me to know is that we need to start really learning about each other's jurisdictions too. This really has brought a lot of that to my attention. You know, we have talked about this with Aurora, you know, learning about what Houston has done on homelessness initiatives, but really we need to understand each other's regions. So I even think I would propose even for next year, you know, our planning committee, hopefully we can have a leadership planning committee where we have our past chair, the chair now for 2024, which is myself. I don't know why I'm talking in third person. And then, you know, the vice chair, which will be Denver. So if we can kind of help plan this collaboratively, what I would like to do is put forth sort of a way that we can send out some sort of survey to everyone, sort of next steps. We kind of had to cut our conversation short on how we're going to be funding the supportive services a little bit. We do want to have a litmus test on your staff. So I would encourage everyone to go back to your staff. How do they feel about bringing forth some information and some research on supportive services and how we really engage with Proposition 123. I think we're going to have to know how we engage with Prop 123 to begin with, but then on top of that, the supportive services, and then really how we want the leadership in 2024 to help support our cities and counties. I always say cities and counties because we are a city and county, but I know that we can make sure that we engage in a regional way, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I think Denver and Boulder and I will probably talk about that. If anyone has any pushback on that, or Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sounds good.
Okay, Mark's like, let's go. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. And I'm sorry, everyone online. We tried to get to you. And so if you have any further questions, just email the group and we'll make sure that we pass on the questions and any information. Thank you.
See ya. Have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Get some turkey.
Okay, thanks.